Hello YouTube, and thanks for tuning in to this video. So this is the first part in a new series. This is going to be, I think, probably a fairly lengthy series of videos covering as much music theory as I can, and I'll talk a little bit about why I think it's sort of important to learn a bit of music theory and all that kind of stuff, but wherever possible we're going to link it into being an electronic musician, because you know that's why you're watching my channel, because I do electronic music stuff. So it'll be linked into specifically to Ableton Live, but the theory stuff we cover and the principles and stuff is going to be relative to any DAW that you any DAW that you may want to use. So you're probably thinking, yeah, what's the point of learning music theory? And you don't have to. You can quite easily just fire up any DAW, stick some loops in there, and make an absolutely killer banging track. The only downside to that is you may be using loops that other people may be using in their tracks, and you're very limited as to what you can do with that. With a little bit of music theory knowledge, you can make a good sounding track into an amazing sounding track, whether that's a happy poppy track or a deep dark industrial techno kind of track, because we're going to learn all about different scales and chords and triads and tones and semitones and all this kind of stuff that you may have heard mentioned in the past and thought, I have no idea what all that means. Well, hopefully by the end of this video series you will know what that means. There is also going to be a sort of a book that accompanies this. This book will be available to download to my Patreon subscribers, supporters, whatever you want to call yourselves. Massive shout out to everybody who's supporting me on Patreon at the moment. It is much appreciated. That's going to be like a work in progress, so there's going to be chapters added to that probably every couple of weeks or every week or so, as I write them and put new stuff in. There's also a book on synthesis on there as well, which I need to revisit and finish because I never kind of finished that. But yeah, Patreon details are in the description of here. Just head over to there. And I'm going to make the book available to tier 1 and above, so you've only got to pay $1 a month to get that and get all those updates for now. That is a limited time offer. It may go up at some stage. I may make it available only to tier 2 and above at some stage, but that's only £3.50 a month anyway, so it's all cheap, and it all helps support me and my time into doing this and hopefully making better videos, and I use all that support to go back into the channel. So we've got piano over here. Okay, we've got my digital piano. This is what I use for a little bit of writing stuff on, but I also teach piano, so I use that for my teaching. And we're going to link into Ableton Live as well, and I'll put a few different camera angles up so you can see this a little bit closer, which I'll switch over to in a minute. So what we're going to cover in this first video is a little bit about the keyboard layout, and talk a little bit about how we name the keys, and also we're going to get into what are tones and semitones, and again I'm going to link that into some of the devices in Ableton Live. So without any further ado, let's switch the camera angles over and we'll get on the keyboard and we'll get started. Okay, so over on this view you can see we've got a full-size 88 key piano, which when you first look at one of these it's a little bit like, oh right, okay. What the hell's all this been? So we're going to just look at how to break down a piano and look at how we can kind of work out where we are on the piano, and a lot of this will develop over coming videos as well, so you need to stay tuned for those. So I meant to say, let's go back over and look at this camera, hit the bell button, the subscribe button, you know what to do, and then you'll get notifications when I upload new videos. So to navigate a piano, like I say, this is a full-sized keyboard, so we get 88 keys, but we only need to learn one section. And if we look on the camera here right in the middle, we're going to learn this section, because basically it repeats. If we look up and down the keyboard, we can see we've got 2 black notes, 3 black notes, 2 black notes, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, and that goes all the way up the keyboard. So you've only got to learn this one section because it repeats. So once you know all the note names in this one section, you know what they are in the rest of it. They are referred to as different octaves. We're going to cover octaves in a later video, but we only have a limited number of notes in what is called our musical alphabet. If we switch over just onto Ableton Live and I'll show you the piano roll on there, you can see from our piano roll here, we've got exactly the same layout. We've got the 2 black notes, 3 black notes, 2 black notes, and they all repeat. And it's labelled with where the position of the note C is. Now, the next video I do is going to be all about middle C, which is our best friend notes. That will, again, make more sense as this series develops and you get into it. But we've got the same thing. Let's just zoom in a little bit so we can see. So we've got exactly the same layout, 2 black keys, 3 black keys, and actually as you hover your cursor over here, you can see it tells you the names of the notes. So we're just going to go through those first of all, just so we know the names of the notes. You may know all this already. I'm kind of assuming in these videos that you know absolutely nothing. So you know, some of it you may know, some of it you may not. So let's just head back over onto the piano, and we'll just go through the note names. So our musical alphabet goes from A to G. So this note here, if I play it, that is an A. Okay, and as we go in this direction, which is going higher in pitch, so remember we go from here, if we go in the right hand direction we go higher in pitch, if we go in the left hand direction we go lower in pitch. The piano roll is exactly the same, it's just that the piano roll is horizontal rather than vertical. So as you go down on the piano roll, you would go lower in pitch, and as you go up on the piano roll, you would go higher in pitch. So it's just like a piano on its side, basically. So we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we go back to A again. Okay, so you can see how it repeats. Now I'm actually going to look at this section here from C to C, okay, because this is the bit that we're going to work on first of all. So we've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then it repeats. D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Okay, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So you could go all the way from the keyboard just repeating those 8 notes. Okay, so that's all the white notes. We've then got the black notes. So the black notes are named relative to the white notes. And a black note can be either a sharp or a flat. So if I go from this C and I go up to here, that would be C sharp. Basically what we've done is we've sharpened that note. So it's kind of just changing that pitch slightly. Okay, and we're going to talk a little bit about semitones and tones in a minute. So that would be C sharp. Now the confusing thing is this can also be called D flat. So if we go from a D and I go down, that's flattening the note. So that would be referred to as D flat. Okay, so C sharp and D flat are basically the same note, which is a little bit confusing. Now if we go to an E, we haven't got a black note between the E and the F. So technically we don't have an E sharp or an F flat. Now in some instances an F is referred to as an E sharp and an E is referred to as an F flat, which is a little bit confusing. I'm not going to go there for now, but that is the case. And we have the same thing from B to C. Okay, there's no B sharp and there's no C flat because there's no black notes between them. And so if we go back over onto the piano roll on Ableton, you can see as we hover our cursor over here, as we said before, we can see it tells you the name. Don't worry about the numbers yet. We're going to talk about those in the next video. But you can see we've got the C, D, E, and so on. Now, a lot of DAWs don't actually refer to flats. They have all these just named as the sharps, because obviously it would get confusing. You can't have sort of 2 names on those. But bear in mind that they can be named the same with the sharps and the flats. So, what we're going to look at then is tones and semitones. We're going to deal with semitones first. So a semitone is the smallest musical value that we have. If I actually go over to the controls on analog, okay, down here, looking at these 3 things here, we've got octaves, we're going to cover that later, and then we've got semi. So as we change this, that's going to change the note by a semitone. So a semitone is basically going from one note to the next adjacent note. Okay, that is a semitone. So if we go back over onto the piano, and we'll just go through and show you a few semitones over there. Okay, so if I go from the C to the C sharp, that is a semitone. Okay, also known as a half step. That would be a half step. That would be a half step. So most of the time, it's going to go from a white note to a black note. The exceptions are here and here. If we go from an E to an F, okay, we're still going up a half step. Right, so it's still a semitone. And if we go from a B to a C, that is also still a semitone, okay, because we've not got an extra note in between it. So you've got to watch out for those. So don't assume that that is not a semitone, because it is. Okay, so that's semitones. If we look at tones, a tone is basically two semitones, okay? So if we go from a C to a D, we've gone up one semitone, two semitones, okay? So if we go from a C to a D, is a tone. From a D to an E is a tone. Now here's a slightly confusing one, because you would kind of think an E to an F would be a tone, but as we've just learned, that is a semitone. So a tone from an E would go to the black note there, okay? Because remember, we're going to go up two semitones each time for our tone. So it's just really getting your head around and remembering which one is which. So remember, one step up is a semitone, two steps up is a tone. Regardless of whether you're stepping up from a white note to a white note or a white note to a black note, it's always following those rules of those two steps. So if we then head on back over to our Ableton, if I put in a note on, put a C in just there, okay, and we'll play that. Right, let's just make that a little bit shorter just so it's not quite as annoying. So it stops. Turn it down a little bit. Let's just take it up an octave. Again, octaves don't exist in your world because we've not covered them yet, but that's basically going up to there. Okay, so that is now playing a C because that's what we've told it to do. If we go down to our oscillator section here and we take it up a semitone, okay, if we take that to 1, ooh, get it, that is now playing, okay, a C sharp. Let's just turn the second oscillator off, otherwise it's going to be out of tune. Okay, if we take it up to there, that's a D. Same as this one. So you can hear it's in tune with that key on the piano, hopefully. So if we take it down one semitone. Okay, so that is what the semis thing does here. Now that is useful in synthesis because we can actually sort of create a chord by detuning one oscillator against the other one, but that is what our semi dial does here. We also have detune. So even though even though semitones are our smallest musical value, we do have the ability to change the pitch between two semitones. And okay, so if we look at the detune dial, this goes from 1 to 3, and it's actually kind of going up in hundreds, sort of, right? So if you imagine 1 as being 100, because we have 100 cents in a semitone. So let me take that down to 0, and if we put this up onto 1, in fact, let's just type it in there. It's going to be easier. That's actually now going to take it up to the. Okay, that's taking it up to that C sharp. So this one actually goes up to 3. So you can actually go up detuned by 3 semitones. But we can have anything in between the two. So let's just. Okay, so we sort of, if it's on like 0.50. Okay, it's kind of creating a pitch that's halfway between C and C sharp, which isn't a note that exists. But again, this is all useful in synthesis stuff. But this is why I just want you to think about and just go over what these dials do in the detune thing. And then just so you know, there are 12 semitones in an octave. So we're going to cover octaves in a bit more detail. I think that's coming up in the next video or the one after that. But that's how they're kind of basically all made up, these different things. So we have 100 cents in a semitone, 12 semitones in an octave. So if we took this up 12, again, let's just type it in, that note would now be playing a C up here rather than a C down there. Okay, so that is how these work. And you'll find these dials on any synthesizer, usually in the oscillator section or near the oscillator. You don't necessarily always have, they might be labeled differently, they might be labeled as cents or this kind of thing, but most synthesizers will have an octave and a semi and a detune. Not all, but most will have give you that sort of facility. So that's basically it for this first video. Just really covering the basic concept of the notes on the keyboard, and that is the same for whatever you're doing, whether you're playing it on a piano, whether you're doing it on a MIDI controller, a synthesizer. It's always exactly the same layout. So we're looking at it from that piano point of view. So there we go. That's part 1. So join me in part 2, which will be coming up fairly soon. Depends on when you're watching this. It may already be available. Where we're going to look in more detail at middle C, and the reason why middle C is a really important note and one that we would want to start on, and how actually just using the white notes we can start to make ourselves sound like we can actually play the piano as well, which is pretty cool. So that's coming up in the next part. So use your things, like, subscribe, share it around, check my music out on Spotify if you like that kind of thing. And if you want to consider supporting me on Patreon, and you will get a copy of the this book that will be a work in progress to download, which is basically going to be the notes that go with all these videos, but it's a good reference point of view, and there's diagrams and all sorts in there explaining everything that I've gone through in this video. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next part. Cheers.